Well, I'm really proud to receive this award. When issues arose in one of our the most exciting construction projects that we're going to see in St. Louis, longtime Cortex, Yafet El Amin and Senator Nasheed came to me and said, "Hey, this is a real opportunity for the mayor to put his money where his mouth is, and that is, I mean that metaphorically, and that is, this is a real opportunity to start down a new path where in the past the city has focused on minority participation with small businesses and contracts. What Yafet and Senator Nasheed were pushing for was something different, and that is minority participation at the workforce level with workers. And with the events that are going on in Ferguson, it's now been exposed, a number of issues have been exposed in St. Louis. Ferguson is certainly about the shooting death of Michael Brown, but it's about more than that. And one of the issues that it's about is economic disparities, racial economic disparities in our region. And when they brought it to me, I was like, well, I agree with you, but how do we do it? And we were stuck on how we do it. But because Yafet and the senator and I sat down and collaborated, our worldviews may not be the same, our political views may not be the same, but we had a problem to address and an opportunity to take advantage of. And what I'm really proud about is how we were able to sit down together, talk it through, brainstorm it through, and really come up with, I think, was a unique solution that really, I think, was a historical solution for the city, and that is an executive order issued by the mayor to require that on projects that get public subsidies, get government subsidies, that they have to meet these workforce goals. So I'm really proud not only of receiving the award, but really of the collaborative effort and the way we went about coming up with the solution. To me, I'm as proud of that as I am the solution itself. Well, I think diversity is important to our region for a number of reasons, and one is just plain fairness. I mean, in this country, if you want to work hard, if you want to make sacrifices, if you want to improve yourself, you should be able to get a job. You should be able to get ahead in America. And the color of your skin, where you come from, your parents' income, those should not be factors. And it's good for our whole country if everyone is rewarded for hard work and sacrifice, and not just some people. So it's a matter of fairness. Number two, again, related to the Michael Brown shooting in Ferguson, certainly that's about the shooting itself, but it's also about the economic disparities. For instance, in North St. Louis and North St. Louis County, there's something like 16,000 young African Americans who are neither in school nor have a job. And that's obviously a problem for them and how they're going to get ahead and how they're going to make a living for themselves. But it's also a problem for the rest of us, and there are issues that come out of that, including issues of crime and issues of neighborhood development and issues of families. That kind of economic disparity is a real drag on. So it's really good for everyone. Certainly, as a matter of fairness, it's good that young African American people feel like, men and women feel like that if they work hard and sacrifice, they can get ahead in St. Louis and get ahead in this country. As a matter of fairness, that's important. But it's also important to the rest of us for the economic prosperity of the St. Louis metropolitan area. That everybody who wants to contribute to our economy and who wants to work hard and who wants a job has the ability to get one. So I think it's good for everybody. Well, there's a couple of issues there. First of all, we eat, breathe, and think about these matters all of the time. A lot of our constituents don't. And a lot of our constituents really don't understand the issues, don't understand why they're important, don't understand the challenges and the opportunities. And that's where leadership comes in. So it's, I work for Mayor Francis Slay. He's my boss, and he has given us a direction that these issues are important to him and important to the city, and that he is going to lead on them. And so leadership matters in this case. There are lots of things in our community that will happen at the grassroots level and bubble up from there, and there are other things that won't happen without strong leadership at the top. And this is one of those areas where, if left to its own devices, our economy and the economics of St. Louis are not going to fix this problem, are not going to address it. Market forces are not going to address these issues by themselves. They're only going to get better, they're only going to get addressed, and we're only going to get our economy moving forward with leadership. So it's vitally important that as the Chief of Staff to the Mayor, who wants us to go in this direction, that I'm part of that leadership, and that sometimes we step out and do things that people don't understand and they're not sure about, but that they trust us that we're doing the right thing for the right reasons, and it's going to make our city better. and it's going to make our region better. I also think that it's important that everybody in this city understand whether or not they supported Francis Slay for mayor and whether or not they voted for Francis Slay for mayor. They need to understand that he is their mayor and that he represents them and that he will address the issues that are important to them. Not just the people who voted for him, but also the people who either didn't vote for him or actually voted for one of his opponents. And that's really important. That's not only important in St. Louis, that's important in Missouri and our country. That our elected leadership, more and more when you look in Washington, it looks like the elected leadership there, they represent coalitions and they represent, they represent fractions of the electorate. And at the end of the day, that's why you see that sort of divisiveness in Washington. And you have one group of members of Congress who feel like they represent a certain portion of America, and another group represents a different portion, and they fight it out. What we really need are elected representatives, both at the administrative level, like president, governor, and mayor, and at the representative level. We need elected officials who understand they represent everybody, including people who disagree with them, including people who didn't vote for them and don't support them. And we have to all come together to address these issues, because if we fight over these issues instead of working on compromise and finding common ground, then things are not going to get better for anyone. There are a lot of people who haven't been exposed to some of the issues that some of the people who live in poverty in our city and our region face every day. And there are people who go through life, and it's probably a good thing that they don't experience the very difficult challenges that poor people in our city and our region face every day. But it also makes it difficult for them to empathize and difficult for them to understand what the challenges are. And what we need to do to overcome them. And I think that there are people who are people of goodwill. There are many, the vast majority of white people are people of goodwill who, when they understand what the challenges are and when the difficulties faced by poor people and working class people, are more than willing to be supportive. But it's not in their worldview. They haven't experienced it. They don't live it. They don't see it every day. They may not fully understand the issue. So it's really important that that's where leadership comes in. And it's really important that our leaders not only, I think our leaders need to do more than just preach at people and tell them, eat your spinach because it's good for you. Support minority inclusion because it's good for you. They need to do more than just preach at people. They need to explain to people why this is important to them, why it's important to everyone in our city and everyone in our region, that everybody have a chance, if they're willing to work hard and sacrifice, get ahead. And that there are lots and lots of people who, through no fault of their own, are not in a position where either they got a good education, got good training, or have access to a good job, even though they want it. And so, people have misconceptions, because of their own worldviews, because of their own experiences, that they don't fully understand, maybe how other people live. And so it's really important for our leadership, not just to set the moral tone, but also to explain to people why this is important to everybody and why it's important to them, even if at the beginning of the conversation, not everybody understands why it's important to them. So it's really important that, listen, at the end of the day, the demonstrations, the protests, and the unrest happening in Ferguson are going to make a lot of people uncomfortable and going to make some people mad. But at the end of the day, they are raising issues that need to be raised, that need to be discussed. Now, how we solve those issues and what we do to solve those issues are a different question. I believe in that case, we all need to come together. White people and black people, city people and county people, we need to come together to address those issues. But if we're going to be honest with each other, a lot of those issues would not be addressed if it wasn't for the demonstrations and the unrest that happened. Likewise, MOKAN sometimes gets on my nerves, probably gets on the mayor's nerves, maybe makes people feel uncomfortable, and maybe there's some things that MOKAN does that maybe I wouldn't do it in that way. But at the end of the day, MOKAN is raising important issues that we all have to come together to address. And we have to address it for the good, not only of MOKAN members, but for the good of our city and the good of our region. And so, yeah, it is uncomfortable at times. And I'm sure there are times where I've lost my temper and said, Yafet, hey, would you just leave me alone? But at the end of the day, they are raising important issues. And in the case that we're talking about today, that I'm being honored for, the workforce participation goals, first starting on Cortex and then expanding them more citywide. Not only did MOKAN bring the issues to the surface, and bring them to our attention to a point where we couldn't ignore them. But MOKAN was also part of the discussion that led to the actual solutions. So, they made our city better, they made our region better by raising the issues and by working with us in a collaborative manner to find common ground, to find a compromise to solve them. So I think that everybody has a role to play in this, and it's not going to be easy. There are people who just don't understand the issues and get angry about the issues and don't understand why inclusion and being purposefully inclusive is important. I think almost all, we have a lot of people of goodwill in the St. Louis metropolitan area, and I believe we don't have nearly as much old-fashioned racism, the kinds of things that happened in the 60s, but we still are not as purposefully inclusive in St. Louis as we need to be, and we don't always go out of our way like we need to be to address what now are actually more difficult and more complicated issues than civil rights supporters and activists in the 60s faced. And so it's really important that people understand the difficulties that some people face and also understand why it is important that we address those challenges and take care of the opportunities. I mean, if we have a more just and prosperous St. Louis, it is going to be good for everybody, including, by the way, the people who live in Clayton and people who live in Ferguson and people who live in Ladue. It's good for all of us if St. Louis is known as a place where anybody can come, whether you are a person of color or not, whether you were born in the United States or not, and no matter who you love or who your parents were and how you live your life, that you can come to St. Louis and get ahead because of your talent, because of your drive, because of your tenacity. If we are known as that kind of a place, our economy will grow, we will prosper, we will all do better. And so creating that kind of a place is important for everybody, and I mean everybody, from O'Fallon, Illinois to O'Fallon, Missouri. Not everybody understands that yet. Not everybody fully understands why it is good for them, but it is. And there are other places that have accomplished that. There are other cities in metropolitan areas like Atlanta and Portland and Boston and other places like that, where it's sort of built into their brand and built into their DNA that this is the place you come to get ahead, no matter what your background is, what the color of your skin is, what your, whether or not you're gay or lesbian, whether or not you were born in the United States or not. This is the place where people with talent and drive and people who want to get ahead can go. We don't have that brand image in St. Louis right now. As a matter of fact, I would postulate that we have the opposite brand image. So it's really important that we all understand that this is good for all of this. Certainly we should do it out of fairness. Okay, in America, it has always been, no matter where you came from, where your grandparents came from, that you would have an equal opportunity to get ahead in America. So it's certainly a matter of fairness, but it's also a matter of economics, and it's a matter of how are we going to grow our economy in St. Louis? How are we going to keep our kids and grandkids here instead of moving to other more prosperous places? So even people who think that they are far removed from this have a stake in making inclusion, just a matter of daily, really how we do business on a day-by-day basis in St. Louis. It should matter to everyone.